Welcome everyone. Today we have another new episodes and we have our two new guests. But issue is that already people know about them, Mr. Gennady and Mr. Charlie. I think after 3 November, Mr. Charlie has to take over the US responsibilities. We assume even in futures there is a chance that transhumanist can move in a different way. On the other hand, there is a huge audience demand. Demand is that many young people, they ask me they want to listen Mr. Charlie's song, so we will arrange some songs and other things today. And most important point of view is that today is the 3 November, USA is 2 Novembers, elections. What's going on, what's happening in USA? Even most important thing is that we are tired of observing this two parties, they are controlling the politics, and there are many positive and negative aspects. We want change. We want change in the global supremacy. We want change in the leadership positions. We want science and technological involvements. So how do you want to share your views with our audience? I want to start with Mr. Charlie, then Mr. Gennady. Yeah.
Well, thanks for having us. It's always a pleasure to be on your show. Yeah, we would. Our goal really is to increase our membership, but you're right. We do need to change this system that we have in the United States of this duopoly. It's pretty constraining. We don't have much choice of who we get to choose from, essentially, and it does keep us from having really choices like ours. The United States Transhumanist Party is about putting science at the forefront of politics so that we can embrace the idea of how to solve major problems as they come along, even preemptively. We would have never had this kind of terrible crisis in the United States of COVID to the extent at which it is now. Clearly, we would have addressed this in a much different way, and we would not have had such crazy suggestions as our current leader, Trump, with injecting cleaner fluid or something silly like that. Because we believe with the Transhumanist Party, we believe that science really is what is needed in all aspects of how the world is run. It's about not just health, but the economy and education and so many other aspects. So that's kind of where we're at. That's what we're hoping for. Maybe we'll win tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow's going to be a big, great day, and somehow we're going to pull it out. We always like to be optimistic. Let's hear from my good friend and our chairperson, Gennady.
Yeah. Yes, thank you very much, Charlie. And I'm going to toast to the possibility of us winning tomorrow. Because people do have the option to write in Charlie Cam for president and Liz Parrish or Elizabeth Parrish for vice president in the vast majority of U.S. jurisdictions. And if you do that, if you live in the United States, please let us know. Email U.S. Transhumanist Party at protonmail.com. We would love to count your vote, even if it doesn't get officially counted for whatever reason, because write-in votes are tabulated quite irregularly in most jurisdictions. But I believe we have run a valiant campaign in 2020, a pandemic year, a year of great social strife in the United States. But we were out there promoting the message of putting science, health, and technology at the forefront of American politics. And that is fundamentally what Charlie's campaign stands for, and that is what Charlie Cam and Liz Parrish have stood for in their work within the transhumanist movement, which spans many years, and they are going to continue to be ambassadors for the transhumanist movement and the U.S. Transhumanist Party even after this election, because as Charlie mentioned, our foremost aim is to put these issues before the American electorate so that people recognize it's not about the controversies of the day. It's not about who has compromising information on whom. It's not about the issues that essentially inspire division and outrage. Rather, it's about the long-term trajectory of humankind. We are dealing with some serious issues. We're dealing with a global pandemic right now. We're dealing with social upheaval, but we're also dealing with the great promise of science and technology to cure diseases, to make life better for billions of people throughout the world. And I think sometimes in the heat of politics, this gets lost. And we want to bring focus to the possibilities, to a longer term outlook, which is actually a more hopeful outlook, one that is exemplified by both the words and the work of our vice presidential nominee, Parrish, who has joined us today.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. One of the questions actually I try to ask different US scholars, political peoples, but they cannot give me specific answer of my questions. I want to ask this question to Madam Liz. USA is one of the biggest country around the world, knowledge-wise, economy-wise, science and technology-wise. They have Silicon Valley, modern people, everything USA has. But my question is that when we can see USA has woman president?
When will we see that?
Yeah.
I think we have a long way to go. So as you know, the US has been at the forefront of a lot of areas, and we are still an innovation leader, but we're getting behind on translation of that innovation. We have vastly raised a culture more around financial gain rather than doing the right thing. And I think that the connection between giving up power to others to maybe lead in a different way have gotten lost in the culture. So we're very much about finances. We're very much about amassing as much as you can, nepotism. I think that it's just a sad state of affairs that the translation hasn't really come out as equality or equity to different groups. And so the status quo has essentially stayed in the United States for a long time. And that is just the power, the passing off to power to like people. And so, you know, I think that our culture has to grow a lot. We have to realize that change is a good thing. And, you know, still in this country, very few people own most of it. So, you know, that equity and equality just has to be handed over and doled out. And we need to change the culture at the very base root level in order to do that. So we are getting closer to change with new generations coming up. But you know, I'm very much interested in lifespan extension, and so helping people who are from older generations get used to the idea of change and trying new things is going to be one of the challenges that we deal with people living longer.
Thank you. Based on the audience request and other things today, we're going to share some of your works with our audience. I want to start with Madam Liz's videos, if you allow me. Let's see. Just a moment. Anyway, well, we can start on this leadership issues. Let's say, Mr. Charlie, what's your opinion about this leadership, especially when we see, let's say, New Zealand, they are doing very good with their women prime ministers, even though, let's say, Taiwan's and other things. In Transhumanist Party is completely different. They are based on science and technology, and they are believe in modern things, and we see in the leadership positions women playing very good roles. Example, even I'm from Bangladesh. My prime minister women, opposition leader women, as well as our speakers and education minister women, many important positions, women playing their role. And most important thing is that if you see Bangladesh, even though they are very small developing nations, last few years their economic growth and everything go triple. So what do you want to share about these points? Even our expectation is high. We want more women leaders in the global community.
Yeah, clearly I believe in that. As you can tell, my vice presidential choice was a woman, and I think she's actually more qualified than I am to run the United States. I will say though that I don't think it's necessarily. I mean, I understand the disparity and the unfairness that's been practiced in this country in particular towards women. Even the right to vote wasn't that long ago where they weren't allowed. And same thing for people of different racial backgrounds. But as a transhumanist, we don't, we're not, we don't discriminate at all. We are, looking for people that are smart and that have good compassion and empathy and want to advance the causes of doing good things for our country and the world. And really, it's so not about gender or race. In fact, if you really think about what we're looking at in the long run, if we are going to merge with technology, robots don't really have gender or race. So, if we want to go that route, that'll never be a real issue.
Okay, thank you. We want to observe some of the videos. Like I want to start with this one.
Sharif, I believe the audio output for that video is going through your headphones, which is why you can't hear it.
Okay. So you cannot hear this live video audio?
No.
Still no?
No, I think it's an issue of it playing through your headphones. So you can hear it, but we cannot.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, okay. Is there any problem like this audio or other things? I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry about that. So let's continue our discussions. My team is checking that what's going on. Anyway, okay. Let's focus on the discussions. As like USA has elections this November, and we are observing that I think that it will be very competitive elections. And what your observations? What will happen? And Mr. Gennady, what your thought about these elections and the future of American global collaborations?
Yes, so this is an interesting election season because there is such a wide gulf in perceptions based on which candidate people support. So, for example, if people support Joe Biden, they generally believe that Biden is favored to win because Biden has an edge in pretty much all of the official polls right now. On the other hand, the people who support Donald Trump are going to say the official polls are biased and not all Trump supporters are even going to respond to the polls. And Trump supporters are more likely to believe that there is some sort of widespread electoral fraud, even though there's not really any evidence for that happening. Generally, American elections are very secure, and the amount of instances of fraud in a given election can likely be counted on one or two hands. So there is this gulf of perception, which is quite troubling because no matter which one of the major party candidates wins, the other party's supporters are going to say that something about the process was illegitimate. And one of the important aspects of a functioning democratic system or a functioning Republican system is a peaceful and orderly transfer of power. If you don't have that, then the situation could degenerate into, at the very least, sporadic violence, and the worst case scenario is a civil war. Now, I don't expect that to be likely in this situation because America still has robust institutions in other respects, and most people are too comfortable to want to fight a civil war no matter what happens. However, I think the worst outcome of this election would be an indeterminate one, where one candidate is kind of the presumptive winner, but the other side challenges that either through the court system or just through widespread public allegations of malfeasance of some sort. Now, there's also another issue in that third parties, minor political parties, are not properly represented in the American system. And this goes back to the polls. So the polls typically do not include even quite prominent third-party candidates like Joe Jorgensen of the Libertarian Party or Howie Hawkins of the Green Party. When people are polled as to what candidate they support, sometimes those options are not even included on the list from which people get to select. So one, this means that people who are polled don't even find out about those options, and they also don't find out about Charlie Cam or Liz Parrish running for president, and thus they feel compelled, in a sense, or constrained might be a better term, to vote for one of the major party candidates or the other. And also, there's another issue with regard to the preponderance of mail-in voting this year. Now, some states have had mail-in voting for a long time, including for American citizens who live abroad. But this year, about 68 million votes have been cast through the mail already. And this is quite a large total compared to prior years. And as a result, there's going to be a concern about when those mail-in votes are going to be counted. If there's a delay in counting those votes, or if someone challenges the legitimacy of the mail-in votes, that could throw in some complications to the outcome. So we do not know if at the end of the day, on November 3rd, there will be a sufficiently clear winner that one candidate would concede to another. However, what my hope is that no matter who, there will be a way to move forward. There will be a widespread recognition that this process took its course, even if we believe that elements of it are unfair or in need of reform. We can still accept the result for the sake of an orderly transition if there needs to be a transition of power. And that way, in the next 4 years, we can focus on policy initiatives that could improve life in this country and advance the progress of science and technology.
Thank you. Thank you. Madam Liz Parrish, we want to know one specific point. Let's say in US elections, I think previously it never happened. Debate, but our expectation was very high about debate, not up to marks. That is real fact. Again, the elections, many things is happening which is not actually, we never think that let's say about news, electronic media, print media issues, about the divisions of USAs, even the international community, presidential candidate, they are complaining that if this party come, it will happen. If that party come, it will happen. So it's clear that US politics need more strong leader. That is fact. It's clear that US politics need more modern peoples. My question is that Liz and Charlie, how you can take this responsibility, how you can cope up with this modern society and solve, even I think what USA has right now, I think they have more internal issues, and how your leadership can solve these internal issues as well.
Yeah, well, you're talking about a lot of things there. So one thing that you're talking about is the media. And, you know, when I was younger, there were forms of the media that I'm sure had their own flaws, but most stations actually talked about the same factual information of what had happened in an incident. Today, we have media that actually is not telling the truth in many cases. They're conflating, they're fabricating, they're telling two different sides of the story. There are several media outlets that now just basically fight with one another. They're known as left-wing and right-wing news sources. And this is really killing America. It's dividing people. If anything in this country would lead to a civil war, it's how the media is handling this election. It just is completely manipulating the American people who actually care and love for one another. They live in a great country with a culture that is emerging into being more forward thinking. And we lead in science, we lead in innovation, and all of that is being essentially just kind of thrown to the side for what looks like a football game. Two parties fighting and the media getting behind it, heating it, tearing the country apart through messages that hit you at the core. And this is a huge mistake. This is a way that we can't go forward. If I was to fall down in the road in the middle of Seattle, both people from the left and the right would help pick me up. And that's all that I need to know to get behind this country and to know that we need a better future. The bickering, the fighting, all of this has just enraged, divided people, and the media has allowed that to happen. And they vastly allowed the first election to go the way that it did by claiming that one party would surely win the election. That just gets more people coming out and wreaking havoc on the vote. So number one, just talking about the vote and how it's been how it's really cannibalizing the country through the media is one important objective to get really clear. That, you know, people in this country do really love each other and they do want the best. And I do believe, for the most part, they do believe in science. but we're in a sort of situation where people have been manipulated and they have been led astray by I believe, both parties of this U.S. duopoly.
Yes. Mr. Charlie, what do you want to share about your leaderships and about your commitment?
I agree. I agree with what Liz said. I think it's very important to acknowledge the fact that there's this crazy divisiveness and there's a lot of misinformation. I do think that one of the biggest problems that we have is an outdated process called the Electoral College, because this is unfortunately unrepresenting millions and millions of people in this country. I mean, in our last, I think, 8 elections, you've had at least a couple of presidents that did not get the popular vote. You know, going back to George Bush, but also specifically Donald Trump. You know, Hillary Clinton had at least 3 million more votes in the last election, and yet she's not president. And that is a huge problem that needs to be eradicated, along with some other systems that we can overhaul. This idea of where we don't have a uniformity in how we accumulate the votes in each state. This is another big problem because states can do whatever they want. There's a lot of manipulation that goes on that's very hard to account for. We're going to need to. That's why the United States Transhumanist Party is so necessary, I think, because we can start to use science to use encryption type devices, things that can really make sure to secure the vote, ways that we can make voting available for a month, for example, instead of trying to hone it in on one day in certain states. So there's a lot of overhauling that needs to occur. It's part of why I think our party it represents the future and of so many good things that could come about.
I agree with Charlie. And, you know, basing our party on science and innovation, you know, Charlie and I wouldn't be making decisions that for the American people that weren't scientifically accurate and able to be fact checked. We would have whole teams. We would reorganize the whole system into whole teams of scientists who are making good decisions and not letting them be risk adverse, not letting them be against business and translation. We can have a robust, energized, energetic country that's on the top of innovation and translating that innovation to people, becoming a powerhouse of supporting the rest of the world's global needs in clean energy, better drugs, better everything. This country should be at the absolute top. We are still at the top of scientific innovation. We need to translate that innovation into a better world.
Okay, thank you. I want to take a questions from our audience for Mr. Gennady. Araf Mehraz, hello sir. How are you combining politics and technology, and how can citizens expect something new through it?
Yes, thank you, Sharif. And in addition to the ideas that Charlie and Liz put forward, the U.S. Transhumanist Party is already combining politics and technology in its own internal processes. Consider that we use electronic ranked preference voting in all of our internal votes, whether it be for candidates we endorse or platform positions. We hold fairly regular platform votes where our members get to propose ideas, also online. We have an online public exposure period where our members contribute their thoughts on the proposals, and then we develop different versions for members to vote on, and they can rank order all of the options instead of just picking the one option that they favor most. And the electronic administration of ranked preference voting enables what is a more technically complex system to be carried out seamlessly and to be able to express the complete preference set of our members. And what that does is it offers a vast improvement to the current system, which is a kind of winner-take-all, first past the post type of system with plurality voting, where people tend to vote for what they consider to be a lesser evil because they're afraid of what they consider to be the greater evil winning. And the problem with that system is different people have different perceptions of what the greater evil is. So in this US presidential election, some people think Donald Trump is the greater evil. Other people think Joe Biden is the greater evil. But in reality, if they had the assurance that their full preference order would be reflected, they could put as their number one choice somebody who more closely aligns with their views, perhaps somebody like Charlie Cam. So they could put Charlie Cam as number one, and perhaps if they like Joe Biden more than Donald Trump, they would put Joe Biden as second to last, and they would put Donald Trump as last. And then the ranked preference voting process goes through instant runoffs, and we can do instant runoffs very easily, even using Microsoft Excel or some other spreadsheet software. We can simulate instant runoffs without having people re-vote. But what happens is the candidate that gets the least first place votes gets eliminated, and then the second place votes of the people who voted for that candidate get assigned to first place. And this keeps going until one option or one candidate gets the majority. So we can do that today already. And there are various other creative proposals that we have yet to implement, like combining this with a blockchain or with some sort of identity verification. And when the organization grows to a sufficient scale where we can't do the identity verification manually, this would be the logical next step. But we can conceive of that kind of system being extended on a nationwide level. So imagine if instead of going to a polling place and standing in line, sometimes for hours and perhaps risking exposure to an infectious disease, as is the case today, you download an app, and it could be an official verified app from the US government where you can verify your identity. The record is stored on the blockchain. Your vote is stored on the blockchain so that it's verifiable, it's traceable, but it's also anonymized. So people can see a vote was cast for Charlie Cam and Liz Parrish at the following date and time. And there's some string of letters and numbers associated with a person's ID. But nobody knows who that person is. So nobody knows that it's you who voted. They just see that a legitimate vote according to the system was cast. This is a lot more reliable. There are many fewer failure points or opportunities for manipulation in that kind of system. And this is just one example of how technology could affect the election process in the very near future. The technical capability for this either exists today or almost exists today. It's a matter of the political will to implement this kind of approach.
Excellent. I have a questions to both of the Mr. Charlie and Liz. Like, why you choose these third-party options rather than you join these Republicans and Democrats, and what's the benefit? What you actually gain from these third-party options, and what will be the futures? And another things I want to know, like in terms of democracy and these points, what do you think? What will be the future of globalizations and democracy? What will be the future impact?
You want me to go first? I can.
Yes, yes.
Sure. It goes back to what Gennady was just speaking about. We would like to increase the chances for third party. The reason that I joined the reason I joined the Transhumanist Party, the reason I'm running, is because we want to really expand the party base. We want to get memberships. We knew we really didn't have much of a chance to win because of the stranglehold of the duopoly that currently exists in the United States. But our goal was to try to attract more and more membership to the United States Transhumanist Party, because we did see the flaws that exist in the system. And interestingly, it was it was really exacerbated by the COVID crisis. I mean, what happened is we saw that we had really an unqualified candidate, unqualified leader in office, and that goes back to the fact that we only have two choices every time there's a cycle that comes around. So So yeah, I mean, we could have tried to join a more popular one of the two systems, but I think that what this country really needs is something more like what happens in even in the UK in the Tory system. We need to have more choices. And there's no reason why we shouldn't have that. I actually do think there's a silver lining to what happened. Trump kind of decimated the Republican Party. And I do think there's going to be a lot of options now after this election for third parties to start to open up, because the Republican Party with Trump did not even have a platform. It was just basically whatever he says goes. I mean, so I think that's why I'm part of this. That's why I'm part of the Transhumanist Party and why I ran. And I do believe, as to your second question, that we eventually there will be a global government. It's going to take a little time, but I do think it might not be that far off in the future. This is actually something that Ray Kurzweil's talked about, and anybody who knows me knows that I'm a big proponent of his. This is something that's been talked about by other transhumanist type leaders and people in that thinking vein, because we do see this technology is unifying the world, and we can't pretend that we're separate from other countries, particularly with things like COVID or climate. So it's inevitable that it'll come to that one day, and I think the United States Transhumanist Party is really at the forefront. I think we're ahead of the game on that one.
Yes, Madam Liz.
So I think that if you want to know why I got involved, you really need to visit the U.S. Transhumanist Party website. You need to read the Constitution. You need to look at the values and the platform. It's beautiful. It simply is a better life for everyone through modern technology and innovation and science. And it's really what the world needs right now. So when I sat down and I looked at the offer and I read the articles, I was ever impressed about how close it is knitted to how I feel that where we need to go. Where we need to go as a country, where we need to go as a people, and where we need to go as an entire world. It talks about inclusion. It talks about innovation. It talks about health extension coming first, taking care of the planet, taking care of one another, a global society. These are the values that I think that if you go and you read, you'll understand why I joined the party very succinctly.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Thank you. Mr. Gennady, my question is that, like, example, your organizations, your party is still growing, and in that situations, like, how you involve with, because we are observing from around the world, you have youth community, you have many scientists, scholars, many people joining with your organizations, but ultimately what your goals, your organization goals, ultimately how, at present situation there are a lot of problem, economical challenge, even every country has different issues. COVID is a major issues, political instabilities and unstable condition is another issues, but you have a lot of members, your organization has a lot of peoples. How in global arena your organization set their goals and how they are workings and what will happen in the next 4 or 5 years?
Yes, indeed. And Sharif, for everyone's information, we have about 3,000 members right now in the U.S. Transhumanist Party, and we are unique among American political parties in that we allow allied members from all over the world to join us. And my estimate is about 30% of our members are allied members. So we are well positioned for policy deliberations that really do span the world and could be applied in other countries in slightly different contexts than the United States. And what Liz articulated about our values, about the areas in which we seek to pursue change and pursue improvements is exactly spot on. And I will also say, even though we're a smaller political party than many, we have an extremely high caliber of members. We have a lot of people who are scientists, who are educators, who are policy-minded thinkers and advocates. And so we can readily form groups of people with significant expertise in various areas of policy. And we're quite open to collaborating across party lines. After this election concludes, a lot of the work of the US Transhumanist Party is going to be shifting to a project-specific basis. And some of the projects may include, for instance, a working group to develop a viable framework for the implementation of a universal basic income that subsequently policymakers and elected officials of any political party, any persuasion can just take and adopt wholesale or with modifications. Another example of a project would be a game to help people understand the concept of longevity escape velocity and radical life extension, and how they might put themselves into the position of a person who is seeking to acquire medical treatments that would extend their lifespan incrementally, but eventually enable them to live indefinitely. So we're looking at a lot of creative projects, a lot of what I would call low-hanging fruit, because it doesn't take a lot of money to implement these kinds of approaches. What it does take is a bit of time and certainly a lot of dedication from our members, our officers, all of whom are volunteers, by the way. So we are in this because we want a better world, because we see the many inadequacies of political and social systems today, but we see such tremendous promise for science and technology to provide a better future. So leading by example, pursuing these projects where we have workable models that can be applied and scaled up, and also creating unity through conversations like this. What Charlie and Liz communicated is a very different approach to politics from the one that unfortunately prevails in the United States today, because we're not seeking to score points against the other side. We're not seeking to get this little edge in the polls that comes from temporarily, let's say, misrepresenting the truth. So if one major party tries to present dubiously sourced compromising information on the opposing candidate, that might lead them to get enough of an advantage to win in the election. But in the long term, it does nothing. It only shows division. So we want to shift the conversation most of all. We want people to look at the Transhumanist Party and see an example for how political discussions should be held. That's another one of our major value propositions.
Excellent. I want to take a question from audience. Mohammad Sohel Rana, I think he want to say, hello sir, should the current, I think, election process be changed? What we saw in the last election, what there was no direct reflections of the people direct vote. So what do you want to say about this point?
I think that Charlie already discussed that. So, popular vote should win an election. And I believe that Gennady also talked about that when he talked about, a ranked system. Again, the Tory system in the UK is very interesting because there are multiple parties. And if you get a certain percentage of the vote, you get a certain percentage of, decision making. You get a seat at the table. And I would love to have us have a seat at the table. I'd love to have us, show an economic plan for the United States. I mean, he may not have been your favorite president, but Eisenhower built roads. We can build new technology. We can put America to work. Right now, America needs to go back to work, and we have enough innovation that's in the pipeline right now to put America back to work at a varied tier of expertise. We could put everybody into all of this new technology that would make it a better place. And yeah, is that going to change industry? Yeah. Is that going to change the power structure of the United States? Absolutely. And we are well overdue for that.
Yes. Thank you. Mr. Charlie, yes.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, that's we did answer that question earlier, and Liz reiterated that this, as far as the voting system goes, yeah, we need to eliminate the electoral college. It misrepresents the system so badly that the elections are determined just by a few states rather than the one vote, one person. So yeah, we need a major overhaul in this country. In fact, the electoral system goes way back to slavery days. I mean, it has kind of a strange history to it, which I don't want to get into, but we do need an overhaul. That's for sure.
Mhm. Yes, Mr. Gennady, I have a specific questions to you. At present, COVID-19 happening everywhere, and it's actually really, really painful. Uh, but on the other hand, in USA, let's say at present, Donald Trump, in his election campaigns, thousands of people joining, and a lot of people coming. There are many activities happenings. What do you think? Is it scientifically, is it good for the US people? Is it a good example that in the COVID period, he bringing thousands of people in a place and political campaign happening? Actually, how he responsible for doing this kind of things? What your observation?
I think every time that a massive Trump rally is held, essentially it's a kind of game of Russian roulette. If you have somebody there who is infected with COVID-19, they may be pre-symptomatic, so they may not realize that they have it yet, and yet people are in such close quarters and they're kind of cavalier about whether or not to wear masks, because there are unfortunately a lot of misleading claims about masks. Some people just don't like them because it's a bit of an inconvenience, but other people doubt the scientific findings on the efficacy of mask wearing. And it's really just tragic because even though it's a bit inconvenient, it's not that inconvenient that people should take a gamble with their lives, but some people do. And some of these events are super spreading opportunities. I certainly hope that at any given event that doesn't happen. I never would wish that on people, but I would also wish that people were more careful. But I think that goes for any sort of mass gathering right now. People need to exercise their prudence and realize the virus doesn't make moral distinctions. It doesn't matter whether you're gathered for a cause that you think is worthwhile or that your opponents or people who disagree with you think is worthwhile. So I would say the same thing for people who are gathered in mass protests who are of more left-wing persuasions, because the novel coronavirus does not care about such things. Viruses are apolitical, but they're destructive to all, and they're destructive in ways that we don't quite know who is going to be harmed more severely. We know some things like age is a risk factor, pre-existing conditions are a risk factor, but there have also been people who are apparently young and healthy who have been affected by this virus. So I would urge everyone just to be careful, get through this. If you need to distance yourself from large public gatherings for a while, that's a fairly small price to pay because you do not want to play Russian roulette with your life. And I do wish our elected officials had more creative utilization of science and technology. We in the U.S. Transhumanist Party have been holding virtual meetings regularly. We've been holding virtual enlightenment salons every single week. And we find it's a more effective way to reach people across distances, and more people now are participating in these venues. So why not use them to a greater extent? Why resort to this antiquated political technology of mass rallies, which isn't really suitable to rational discourse? I know Trump excels at them because he can essentially articulate some slogans that people will agree with on a surface level, but for somebody who wants more nuanced solutions to the problems facing us, they are not a good mode of communication for those purposes. This is a much better mode of communication.
Yes, excellent. beside this COVID, global warming may be another issues. We have to solve this problem soon. And already the world is affecting by this. Even if you observe these Asian countries, you see that flood highly affected right now after this COVID. So even many countries, even I think that USA also maybe in the future affected by the global warming and these kind of things. So what's your opinions? I think I want to know more from this presidential candidate and the vice presidential candidate. What do you think about these global warming issues? How you can solve these things, and how transhumanist parties has commitment to work on that particular point, because we have to work together in the global warming issues. Some of the political parties deny these points, some agree these points, but fact is that the next challenge is global warming. Yes.
Well, yeah, clearly global warming is the United States Transhumanist Party definitely acknowledges that there's global warming and global climate change, and that it is being affected by man-made causes and man-made devices. I think this is why the current administration of isolationism doesn't work. We have to work together with all the countries to really combat the idea of global climate change. Otherwise, we won't have a globe to even fight over. We need to, if the United States if we win tomorrow and I become president, one of the things that we would look to do would be to try to reallocate the budget, so that 54% of the discretionary budget, which is currently spent on our military, can be, we can bring some of that towards different types of technologies like nanotechnology, where you can possibly develop things like nanobots that can go into the atmosphere and change the pollutant atmospheres or decrease the climate to a more acceptable level. I mean, there's a lot of technology that's coming. Some of it's in theoretical stages, or it's being proposed, but we can advance it if we put the resources and money towards it and the attention towards it. So that's where I stand on this, as far as a representative of this party running for presidency.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So when you look at what's happening globally, so number one, global warming is a natural process that the Earth goes through, but we are accelerating it. But now it's not how we could reverse it, because we're not going to reverse it. It's how do we slow it, and how do we survive it? So, that's a technological challenge. For instance, in the next 3 years, the US will put in no coal burning plants. Well, that's really fantastic, except for other countries combined will put in hundreds of them. And so when we look at innovating the United States, we need to look at innovating the world globally. We need to work together as global players. We need to embark upon treaties that will ensure that that is the case. We need to build the technology that other countries need in order to be more carbon neutral. One of my scientific advisors for my company BioViva is George Church, and he's looking at genetics behind permafrost grasses in Russia, the ability to bring plants back that actually help buffer global warming. Also, I'm a proponent of preparing human bodies for the inevitable global warming and space travel. So that may sound really out there, but in your life, if you're around the age of 30, you're definitely going to see this. We will embark upon gene therapies given like immunizations to protect our bodies against radiation, heat exposure, and maybe the loss of certain nutrients in our food. This is a real problem, and we need to build our bodies to survive it, and we need to build the planet to survive it and buffer it as long as possible and prepare ourselves for this coming change of global warming that then leads to global freezing. So if you look at the process, it's actually quite interesting, and we are on the path. So any intelligent species with the ability to control science and technology would be doing everything in their capacity to survive this change. And that is one of the issues that we work on specifically with my company.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to ask questions to Mr. Gennady because educations and healthcares, these are the two things I think right now we have to solve. According to the data from from Asia, I get that 28% of the youth community, those who are more than 18 years old, they drop out from their education systems because they have to support their family. So this is number one challenge. Number two, healthcare system. I think many countries has to solve this healthcare system, and your political parties is based on science and technology. So how your organizations can help the global community to solve, like many of the people, they are just driving to save their families. On the other hand, healthcare systems for the developing nations, even India, even Bangladesh, even Pakistan, Indonesia, Vietnam, many countries has many more challenges. How your organization can help them to solve these kind of things, even USA healthcare systems, educations, how it works. How do you want to share with us?
Yes, indeed. And I agree, these are important areas. And these are areas where technology can make some of the most significant difference ever in any period of history. Consider education. It is possible to provide education to everybody in the world right now that is almost free. I say almost because there would still be a cost of internet access, but even internet access is becoming ubiquitous right now. Consider that a subsistence farmer in sub-Saharan Africa could have a cell phone today with capabilities that the President of the United States 30 years ago could not even have imagined. And this is an example of how the progress of technology can make information available. There are courses available online right now from leading academic institutions in the United States that could be accessed for free. Even YouTube has a vast repository of educational content by which people could teach themselves. And there could be lectures that you could watch for free from the leading experts in the field on pretty much whatever subject you're interested in that has a sufficiently high demand for it. Now, the issue comes with motivating individual learners. That's one area where additional work is needed. And some of the progress in that area could be made through more creative design of educational systems, gamification, for example. There are so many people who willingly spend many hours of time either on the internet or at their personal computers playing games. Indeed, we had a great virtual enlightenment salon about this just yesterday with Sharon Gal-Or, who is a game designer and our foreign ambassador in Israel. And we talked about how do we create educational games that motivate people to spend that time improving themselves, gaining knowledge, and using that knowledge to improve the world. So I would encourage you to look up that virtual enlightenment salon with Sharon Gal-Or for more information on that. But that's just one example. Of course, making sure everyone has affordable internet access is important, but that is getting easier every year with the progress of technology. And of course, then you mentioned a lot of people struggle economically and they have limited time. And limited time is the biggest constraint right now because we're all faced with difficulties of one level or another. All of us have been affected by this pandemic in some way. Some people have lost their jobs. Other people, even though they haven't lost their jobs, they're dealing with new demands, new adaptations on a multitude of fronts. So what can be done to alleviate that? Well, one proposal that the U.S. Transhumanist Party strongly advocates is a universal unconditional basic income, where everybody would get a certain fixed payment that is not dependent on anything else. It's not dependent on how much they earn. It's not dependent on any aspect of their lives. But what that enables them to have is some sort of robustness if they lose a source of income. or if they just want to take some time to focus on self-improvement, on education, on starting a new business, they would be able to do that. And of course, another real important principle is to have a culture that is focused on learning, to have a culture that is focused on self-improvement. And culture is not always easily fixed through technology alone. That's why, in addition to technology, we emphasize rational discourse. We emphasize the importance of civil communication. We emphasize the importance of trying to find unity, trying to find common ground when we talk about issues. And the U.S. Transhumanist Party membership is extremely diverse. In addition to having members from all over the world, we have people of a variety of political and economic persuasions. We have some people who advocate free market capitalism and other people who advocate socialism and everything in between. And yet, we welcome people of different persuasions, different economic, political, religious, philosophical persuasions. All of them are represented in our organization, because as long as somebody has a constructive outlook on the future of humankind, we want them in the conversation. And I think an important component of education is teaching people how to interact with different perspectives while remaining respectful and while trying to find that common ground. So it's not always about just debate within the formal rules, though that's still a lot better than some of the exchanges that happen on social media today. It's about actually genuinely engaging the other perspective and seeing what you can derive from it. Now, on healthcare, of course, is tremendously important, especially if we want to broaden access to emerging treatments, to gene therapies, to stem cell therapies, to organ replacements, to radical life extension treatments, which would be combination therapies of many of these approaches and many others that haven't been developed yet. So to do that, first of all, we need to lower regulatory barriers, greatly lower regulatory barriers. It's completely unacceptable that in the US healthcare system, it takes 10 to 15 years on average for the FDA to approve a new drug or a new device. And the current vaccine review time frame under Operation Warp Speed in the US is a great acceleration from that. And I welcome any acceleration, but it's still not fast enough. And unfortunately, there are still critics in the United States who think all of these layers of review are needed, even while thousands of people are dying every day from the novel coronavirus. So those regulatory barriers need to be lowered. There need to be more allowances for competition, for startups to compete against the large incumbent firms in healthcare. But we also need better infrastructure. The U.S. Transhumanist Party advocates a massive hospital construction initiative right now to more than double the U.S. hospital capacity. We're going to need it with this third wave of the pandemic to contain all of the patients of COVID-19 who are anticipated. And even when we don't have this surge, these hospitals can provide valuable resources for medical research, for treatment of patients with rare diseases. They could also provide employment in sectors that our economy really needs, like healthcare. So that's another aspect. And a further aspect is funding. Instead of fighting the many useless wars abroad, the U.S. federal government could greatly increase the share of resources devoted to anti-aging research or vaccine research or research on diseases, on cancer, on heart disease, on Alzheimer's disease. Any such research is valuable, but I think a fundamentals-oriented research approach that recognizes the role that aging and degenerative conditions have in making the risk of disease higher for everybody is vital. And also consider the vast majority of healthcare costs are for the elderly, for people in their final years of life right now. And it's because they are dealing with essentially a combination of diseases that exacerbate one another. So if people could be rejuvenated to a more biologically youthful state, that could massively save costs for healthcare systems. Indeed, Aubrey de Grey, one of the greatest advocates of rejuvenation biotechnology, says that at the point at which this technology becomes feasible, governments are going to have no real economic alternative but to cover these treatments, because the cost of not covering them would be massive expenditures for essentially sick care in old age.
Thank you. Madam Liz and Mr. Charlie, my major question is that in this economic challenging situations, how you want to solve these things in terms of US perspective, and how you want to solve these unemployment issues. And these unemployment issues, not only USA, I think every country is facing this point. On the other hand, artificial intelligence and these kind of things engage with the industry. So what your perceptions about that, and how do you want to fix and solve this problem? And there are actually huge audience questions. I will take few audience questions after your analysis on that particular point. Mr.
Okay.
Charlie?
Yes. Oh, okay. Yeah. So, well, actually, Gennady covered all of this pretty well. I was very impressed with Gennady. You should probably run for global president. He really did. He covered so much of it. I will say that this COVID crisis kind of pushed forward a lot of these ideas. I mean, all of a sudden now everybody's using telecommunication like never before. I've never been in so many Zoom meetings in my life. It also pushed forward telemedicine. When I wanted to go to the doctor the other day, we did a lot of the examinations just online with what little bit they could do. But clearly, that's going to be advancing soon. Teleeducation was forced upon many people that had children, and it seemed awkward at first, like any new technology, but clearly, it's going to be something that's going to be utilized a lot more because, well, you have things like Coursera or companies where you can get Harvard educations online for very little amounts. So all of these things are happening. It's just that we really need a government that's going to implement them and make use of them, as Gennady pointed out. So that's what I could add to it for now. Otherwise, I think you did a pretty good job of discussing that. Liz?
Yeah, I think that it was pretty well covered. But, when we elevate and start an exponential drive towards new technology, we create a lot of jobs. It's not like technology destroys jobs. It initially creates a lot more jobs, and that's really good for the American people. And I just want to touch on one point of the accelerated access platform to what's called experimental drugs. I think that it went vastly unrecognized by the American public that when President Trump came down with COVID, he was given access to an experimental drug that no one else in the country would be given access to, and swiftly within 4 days returned to office and returned to practice. And that's the power of the technology that is sitting unused by the American people, politicized, held behind regulations, held in biotech companies that can't afford the regulatory process that people could have access to. And when you have healthier people, you have smarter people, you have more capable people, you have people who want to educate in this country if they could afford it. You have people who want to start their own business if they could afford it, if it wasn't a punishment-based society. You start a company, you get a bill before you even make any money. It's quite harsh. And so, the way that we can deal with many of these problems are just future forward thinking. They're ideas that have already been out there, and many of these practices have been tried in different ways with massive success throughout the history of this country.
Thank you. I want to take few questions from audience. Mr. Abiaz Mustain, he asked question, hello sir, what is the role of federal government in elections? Another question, Shahrukh Shumon, hello sir, are voting system protected from foreign meddling? And yes, okay, another questions, okay. How do you forces technology being used to improve mental health? Yes.
So I'll take the questions on voting systems first. And the United States I think is important to understand is a federal system, which means you have a federal government, but you also have individual states. And individual states under the Constitution have every power that is not explicitly granted to the federal government. And that includes the power to administer elections in their state. Now, there is a federal election commission that oversees federal candidacies, and federal candidates who raise certain amounts of money, for instance, are required to register with the Federal Election Commission and file campaign finance reforms. But each state has its own requirements for qualifying to be on the ballot. It also has its own secretaries of state, and the secretaries of state administer the elections, even for federal office in those states. And this creates a system that can be quite cumbersome to navigate because different states have different thresholds. Some states will say you have to gather an exorbitant number of petition signatures by hand in order to qualify to be included on the ballot. In California, the number is over 100,000. And on the other hand, in Tennessee, it's 750. And the number varies each year based on various criteria, like how many people voted in the last election. Some states will allow you to pay a fee to get on the ballot, like Colorado, for example. So it really varies significantly by state. The Federal Election Commission generally oversees campaign finance. So who is raising funds for whom, who is able to contribute what. There are contribution levels for individuals, limitations as to what individuals may contribute, but interestingly enough, not limitations to what organizations called super PACs may contribute. So super PACs are political action committees that are formed specifically for the purpose of fundraising for political causes, and theoretically they're not supposed to coordinate their efforts with candidates, but in practice, let's say a meeting of the minds happens. A lot of people are concerned about the system in the US because of the disproportionate role of money and campaign finance and politics. And in theory, the FEC, the Federal Election Commission, is supposed to regulate that. It's supposed to put restrictions on that. But in practice, what happens is through all of these limitations, through all of these regulations, that benefits the incumbents. That benefits the major party candidates who have a lot of name recognition, so they don't need to spend as much money necessarily, or they get the media attention by default. And these regulations and the cost of compliance create barriers to smaller political parties, to parties like the Transhumanist Party or the Libertarian Party or the Green Party or the American Solidarity Party, and there are various others as well. So this is a strange hybrid system. Again, just like the American Electoral College is a very strange hybrid system of the states sending delegations of electors to elect the president, we have the states administering federal elections in their own jurisdictions, but the federal government also has a layer of oversight. Now, there was another question about foreign meddling, and I'm a bit skeptical about that because that's really a partisan narrative generally advanced by the Democratic Party, and it was largely fueled by attempts by certain groups associated with the Russian government of Vladimir Putin to kind of sow misinformation online. So essentially what they would do is they would sometimes organize in 2016, during the 2016 election cycle, fake rallies for Donald Trump and fake rallies against Donald Trump. And the purpose of doing that was just to sow division, to ramp up the tensions in society that Liz mentioned. But there's no evidence that any votes were actually fabricated, that any results were actually changed. And you could say, yes, some people's minds might have been changed as a result of that. But isn't that the role of propaganda everywhere? And the United States engages in propaganda efforts abroad as well. It certainly tries to influence elections in former Soviet bloc countries. So it's not that different. And I want to emphasize, American election systems, for all of their problems, for all the problems with paper ballots, for all the problems with in-person voting, are still remarkably secure compared to systems in other countries. So I was born in Belarus, and in Belarus, the government routinely rigs elections overtly, like Lukashenko, Alexander Lukashenko, the president of Belarus, back in the late 2000s, made a statement saying, well, they're accusing us of fabricating elections here in Belarus. And he said on air literally the following, well, you know what? We did fabricate the election results because Lukashenko, actually got 93% of the vote, but I was told that was an un-European vote total. So we decided to reduce it to 85%. And he didn't realize what he was saying in that. He essentially confessed that his government had the ability to rig the entire outcome of the election, and that he did it for PR purposes, which of course he did, but he did not get 93% of the vote. And in this most recent election, after badly mismanaging the COVID-19 pandemic in Belarus, Lukashenko gave himself about 80% of the vote total, which is more likely the vote total that was gained by his opponent. And the thing is, he could have, he had the power to do this, given himself 55% of the vote, and it would have seemed more plausible to people. But because he gave himself 80% of the vote, the people just realized this was a complete sham. And they went out to the streets and they protested. And I use this as a basis for comparison with the United States, where it would be inconceivable for any candidate, any party, to do such a thing, because there are many more checks and balances on the American system. So I'm not worried about foreign meddling. I am worried about propaganda about foreign meddling being used to divide people, being used to silence genuine voices, because I've heard and seen on social media comments to the effect that anything critical of Joe Biden or anything supporting a third party is a Russian misinformation campaign, which is just absurd. People have their own opinions, and ultimately they do decide for themselves. And yes, there's a lot of misinformation out there online, but ultimately the systems that we use to vote, I would say, are more secure than not.
Excellent. Madam Liz, what do you want to add? What question you want to take?
Well, I would take the question about mental health. And so I think that this is a critical area for a lot of people. Mental illness and depression and anxiety run rampant through all of the human race, all of us. And we get this question a lot at my company. A lot of people have contacted us and asked us what we are doing about mental health on the side of gene therapy, technology that you might take once in your lifetime to improve your state of being. So when we talk about mental health, I think that this area has a ways to go, because we have to understand that everyone has a varying degree of mental disorder. We certainly have all met, unfortunately, sociopaths, psychopaths, narcissists, highly intelligent people, people with the severe spectrum of autism. And all of these people have something to offer, and yet they may have something that's holding them back from being 100% and experiencing life in the fullest way. And so just like physical health, we would like to learn how to affect mental health, and so that we can lower the rate of suffering in the world. And as was pointed out earlier in the conversation, there is no future for humans on this planet if we can't get together and work on problems together. We have so much ego right now that actually holds us back from accomplishing great things. It is a critical time in medicine to start looking at these problems and start moving people towards real solutions. I remember in one class that I took in college, we looked at a varying list of drugs, illicit drugs, illegal drugs, prescribed drugs, and we were told to check off what the most dangerous drug on the list was. none of us got it right. Most of us chose things like cocaine and heroin and methamphetamines as being the most dangerous. But actually, some of the most dangerous drugs on the planet, as far as people getting into legal difficulties and causing harm to other people, are prescribed drugs for depression and anxiety. And it was quite shocking to the whole group. So we need to make sure that as we move towards this technology, that we do it safely. And as far as whole body health, it might be a technology that comes a little bit later in the game. We may be able to cure heart disease, aging-related diseases before we can securely help the human brain be at its best. But that doesn't mean that if you're in a time of despair and that you're feeling depression and anxiety today, that we're not close enough to it that you will not see that future. So if you're suffering with depression or anxiety or mental health issues, problems with connecting with others, or extreme conditions in autism, you have a gift. You have something beautiful that's happening to you. You're highly awoken to the world, and that's why you're feeling that pain. And that is a gift. Yet we will work as hard as we can in order to ensure that you can experience a better life. And there is definitely a future for everyone with a mental condition, as long as we start moving this technology along as quickly as possible. So I hear you. I know that there's a lot of people suffering out there. You're not alone. Bear with us as we try to expedite these great new technologies into creating a better situation for your future.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Mr. Charlie, what question you want to take?
What question you got left? What do you got for me?
Okay.
Give me something. Throw something at me. I got it.
Yes. Voting system protected from foreign
meddling?
Yes.
Foreign meddling? Gennady covered that one. What else you got? He did.
Okay.
Covered this one.
Okay. Okay, there is another question left. I don't know. Will the decision of the President of the United States in the development of international relations poses more challenges to America in the future? Will America be able to sustain their activities? I think they're concerned about the foreign relation of USA and yes.
Oh, well, it all depends. If I win, we're all going to get along and the world's going to be peaceful and we're going to be advanced very quickly. If Trump wins, sorry, everybody, you might as well just pack up and hide for 4 more years or however. Look, that answer, I don't mean to sound facetious, but it really depends who wins. I do think that there, clearly Trump has pushed an isolationist type policy. He's blended a lot of autocrats around the world, and he's ignored a lot of our allies. So it depends who the winner is. I think Biden would be a better choice, but I think I would be the best choice. I might be a little biased. I will correct that slightly. I think Liz would be the best choice, but she's the vice president. So
I'm happy being the vice president. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you. There is another question. I think who want to start? The businessmen are going to the polls, and the real political are falling behind. In that case, what is the possibilities of obstructing political practice in the future?
So I think what he's referring to is the kind of outsider phenomenon that has increasingly manifested itself in American politics. So Donald Trump is a businessman by profession, and he became a politician, he says, because he was tired of the political establishment. But there is an increasing outsider phenomenon in American politics because the systemic problems that were created by the political class have led many people to be fed up. And so in 2016, I think a lot of people voted for Donald Trump overlooking a lot of his flaws because they thought, oh, this one is different. This politician is not like the other politicians. He, quote, says it like it is. Except the issue is Donald Trump had many of the same vices that the established politicians had. It's just he was blunter about them. And so for some people, that made him more trustworthy. But I think this outsider phenomenon is quite positive more generally. So you have someone like Charlie, who is also an entrepreneur and a much better business person than Donald Trump, and also he would make a much better leader than Donald Trump. You have someone like Joe Jorgensen, too, who is a Ph.D., an MBA, an educator, a professor, who is running for president, and Spike Cohen, her running mate, with whom we had a great virtual enlightenment salon as well in September. He is essentially a commentator. He's a libertarian public intellectual, so definitely not an established politician. And he, by the way, is a supporter of a lot of emerging technologies, of radical life extension. He supports removing a lot of the regulatory barriers that we do. But the key is to have more voices in the system, more people who aren't there to kind of play the conventional political game, who are there because they want to improve the world. And some of these people will be business people, some of them will be educators, some of them will be activists. And the U.S. Transhumanist Party actually has a platform section that discusses this because we are concerned that a disproportionate number of politicians are attorneys. And on the one hand, we understand why that is, because attorneys are skilled in the law and politicians make the law. But if you have attorneys overrepresented in the political profession, they are, of course, going to make the law that is going to be biased in favor of giving more work to attorneys. And the way attorneys get more work is by making laws complicated, nebulous, ambiguous, so that whenever there's a dispute, whenever something is unclear, you go to an attorney and the other side goes to an attorney and you battle it out in a very expensive adversarial court system in order to see who's right. But it doesn't have to be that way. If you had a society where more professions are more proportionally represented, you would have engineers, you would have scientists, you would have philosophers who don't want these kinds of complications, and you would have Charlie Cam sworn in as the 46th U.S. president, because that is what would happen in such a system.
Yes, I think Charlie Cam, what do you want to say about these pictures and even Liz?
Yeah. Yes. Well, you can see Liz is right there next to me as the vice president. What I was getting anxious about who was going to win. Everybody was getting excited, so I decided to hook up my television to a time machine. It's a little project I'm doing on the side, and I was able to look at what was going on January 20th, and I saw, to my surprise, that I was actually being sworn in. So that was very exciting news. You can see in the picture there that the book, it's not the Bible that we're holding up. It's actually Ray Kurzweil's new book coming out next year called The Singularity is Nearer, being held by Sophia the robot. We really did advance things. We were also able to figure out a cure for the COVID in that picture you can see, which is why we were all standing close to each other without masks. I believe Liz actually came up with that cure. That was BioViva, so congratulations on that one.
Thank you.
And you can see Gennady was right there behind me telling me what to say. So it really worked out very well. Congratulations.
Yes, yes, congratulations. Liz, what do you want to share about these elections of 3rd November? Yeah. And already I think your candidate start celebration.
Yeah, well, I think that this will be an interesting year. And, you know, my hope is that people can look at this system in a very different light after this. And so as much as the United States is a country that is looking for change, we need to make sure that the change is going in the right direction. We need to make sure that we have a strong energy and focus on science and technology and ensuring that we're working into a factual world. And, so I think that this is, I'm sorry, you still have the large version of this picture up of me and Charlie accepting. Yeah, I think that this is so fantastic that I have not seen this before. And I am just getting a good, warm inner laugh about it. This is the future that we should see, an inclusive future of all people coming together. Of course, we would hope that this group behind us was a little bit more diverse and global. So we've got to add a lot of people into this. But this certainly is our small but burgeoning community, and I'm really happy to see that. But I'm hoping that we will, with our message, reach far beyond that to the other millions and millions of people who are in this country, and then the billions that then expand around the globe, to bring in new thinking and a new idea and good business, not business based in ego and mafia type tactics, but business that is based in the betterment for humanity. That's just a really important next step for this country.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, what your observation and what do you want to share about this picture, because it's a big hit in the social media?
Yes, indeed. So this picture is essentially the best case vision of the near-term future of this country and of the world. And while the time machine is kind of ambiguous as to whether it will happen on January 20th, 2021 or on a different date, my sincere hope is that it will happen. It will happen within our lifetimes, and someday it will be a matter of common sense for a politician to say, of course I'm a transhumanist, just like many politicians today will say that of course they're environmentalists, whatever party they belong to, or of course they believe in civil rights, whatever party they belong to. I think politicians in this future will say, yes, of course, we believe in transhumanism. We believe in radical life extension. We believe in using science and technology to solve our problems. And of course, Sophia, the robot, is an example of what today's artificial intelligence systems are capable of. She's still what is called a narrow AI, but someday we're going to have beings like Sophia the robot walking around, and they're going to have artificial general intelligence, and then there will be serious questions raised about inclusion, about rights for these entities. This is what the Transhumanist Party tries to anticipate via the Transhumanist Bill of Rights, which is currently on its third version. You could also find it on our website at transhumanist-party.org. But in this kind of future, we don't have the social strife that we've seen in 2020. We don't have runaway pandemics. We don't have severe material scarcity affecting large segments of the population. We don't have healthcare crises. We have a world that is focused on widespread and universally available improvements in every dimension of life. So this picture is a picture of hope. And I hope that everyone else will see the same message in it.
Well, this picture actually was accurate. It's just that when I was building the time machine, I was using quantum computing, and I was using a certain quantum entanglement. I may have actually looked into an alternate universe. So it might have, it's not that it's not happening. It just may not have happened on this planet, but it is in an alternate universe. So my apologies to the whatever I didn't do right on that time machine, but otherwise it looks good to me.
I love it.
Can you give me a portal to an alternate universe?
Yeah. Okay. Yes, everybody love it. I'm sure, because I also observe in the social media. It's actually very good pictures, and yes, it's a picture of hope. So anyway, so we have elections in 3rd November. So what's the concluding remarks for today? And what will happen in this 3rd November elections? What the prediction and what do you want to add? I'm sure Mr. Charlie going to win these elections, So we hope. And one point, this World Talent Economy Forums, when we build up, so we think that Transhumanist Party, they do more focus on science and technology. They're missing the economy parts. So we add just economic parts. So hopefully we can work together and we can bring more hope, more sustainable economy, and more perfect economy for our future generations. Yes, I want to start with Mr. Charlie, then Madam Liz, and then Gennady for the concluding remarks for today.
Well, I wanted, conclusions. I would say thank you again for having us. It was a lot of fun. It was informative. It's always interesting to talk to you, Sharif. Yeah, I expect to win tomorrow, and I think it's going to be exciting when we take over. And I do think that, we're going to reallocate the budget so that we can start to put forward a lot of great things that will help move forward, universal basic income. We could supplement that with molecular manufacturing devices and 3D printing, volumetric printing. There's all sorts of great possibilities for the future once we get into power with the collaboration of the type of scientific minds you saw in that picture. And that's where we're going to be able to really advance good things for a lot of people. We are approaching something called the economy of abundance, as was described by another fellow transhumanist, Peter Diamandis. So there's a lot of good things coming over the next 10 years. We're just excited that the Transhumanist Party is growing. It's growing faster than we even thought. I think it's growing exponentially. So I'm excited about tomorrow, but I'm excited about the future. Now my colleagues can take it away from there.
Yes.
Well, I'm really happy. I was so honored when Charlie invited me to be part of this. And I'm going to visit this alternate universe tonight in my dreams. And so we can accept the nomination. And maybe in the next 20 years, we actually will, right here in this country. So I think that it was an incredible time to build this party, and I want to see this party continue to build. I don't know what is going to happen in the elections tomorrow, but we know what we would like to see happen. So we just have to work towards that. If that's what we want, that's what we will work towards. And I hope that we can build this party large enough so we at least minimally have a voice in outcomes of how this country does science. I'd like to see a lot of white papers come out of all of the meetings we've had, and this mission and this candidacy to change policy. And I think that that's about it. I'm just really happy and honored that Charlie chose me to be his running mate, and we want to win it.
That was my honor. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Gennady, yes.
Yes. And I would like to say, in terms of the caliber of presidential candidates, Charlie Cam and Liz Parrish are my favorites thus far. I don't think I have observed any figures in contemporary American politics that come even close to forging this type of unity, where if people hear their message, they will understand there is something in this for everybody. There's a reason for everybody to support transhumanism, to support the agenda of putting science, health, and technology at the forefront of American politics. This is not a matter of right versus left. We are upwing, as the great philosopher FM 2030 would characterize a movement such as this one, because we are about looking up, looking toward the stars, looking toward the great things that humankind can build, and looking away from the petty strife and petty divisions of our society. And this is a message not just for America, it's a message for the world. Through progress in science and technology, in rationality, in ethics, in applying all of these domains to every dimension of human life, we can overcome every single problem that is facing us today, every single problem that has faced humankind historically. And we need to look at the long term. We need to look past what will happen on November 3rd, whatever that is going to be. And we need to build up the future of our species, because the stakes have never been higher, but the promise has also never been greater. And if there's anything this pandemic has taught us, it is that we cannot assume a constant world. Various fundamental qualities about our lives and the situations we are in can change just like that. And if we are able to anticipate some of those changes, if we are able to turn them in constructive directions, what a wonderful world we could have. And I just hope that I'm around and that everyone in this conversation is around for as long as possible to see these possibilities realized. That is what we're working for, and that is what we hope to achieve together.
Thank you. Thank you for today's sessions, and everybody shared this picture. This is the picture of hope, and this is the best picture for 3rd November elections. I think already, I think our team, they observed the result and everything, and this is really beautiful pictures. We really like it, and everybody shared these things. Thank you for joining today. Thank you for your very good sessions, and the audience, those who come up with the questions. Hopefully in the future sessions you join, and Transhumanist Party actually help us a lot for growing this World Talent Economy Forums. We are planning to do a lot of summits, and we already engage with 10,000 students. We start our work of development, so we need more of your supports and your guidelines, so hopefully we can do something better for the futures. And everybody share this picture. Thank you for today's session.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care.
Live long, prosper.